Hello, my name is DB, my friends call me Drybones. I am your host, and this is Articast. We have a huge amount of very exciting topics today, so many that we probably won't be able to get around to everything we want to discuss. But there's a few things that we just gotta talk about though. First on the list, Valve revealed Richard Garfield is the lead designer on the Artifact project. Second, to everyone's surprise, Artifact is not the Dota 2 card game. Finally, Artifact will not be free to play, and the cards don't come free either. And people are not too happy about that. Without further delay, let's just jump right into it.
Alright. Hi there, my name is Horse Cow. Friends call me Sean, or Scene, and I've been playing Dota for about 4 or 5 years, and I played a little bit of Hearthstone during the beta and right when it came out, but I did not keep up with the card game very well. But I do have a lot of card game experience from younger years.
Hi, my name's Isaac. I go by I recall correctly. I have a few years of Dota experience, about 1,300 hours. Also have a fair bit of Hearthstone experience. Also played Pokemon when I was like 8 because everyone did.
I think he might also be one of the best pharaohs in NA, but that's unconfirmed. That's unconfirmed, but he could be one of the best. Not related to Artifact, but it's worth pointing out. So, our first topic today is just over Richard Garfield running the Artifact project. It's kind of a big deal. This isn't something that people knew about. I mean, when they unveiled Artifact at the International, we didn't really get a whole lot of info, and they've been a little hush-hush up until this point, and they just hit us with this. They're like, yeah, the guy who invented the modern TCG, yeah, he's making this game. But I don't know. What do you guys think that means for Artifact?
First things first, I noticed something on the Artifact Reddit early on, which was a manifesto that he made on the idea of how gaming companies exploit their addicted players and how you can go about preventing that. So not only do we have like the guy who's made sure that the modern card game is as complex as it is, but he's also fully aware of like pitfalls and traps that companies can go into that would cause like some, I don't know, maybe distaste for the company that made it. Like he was talking about how most of the money that comes out of a free-to-play game is going to be on the addicted players that can't wait to have their mana bar fill up, can't wait for certain things to happen through progression. So they end up like pouring in like hundreds of dollars that they can't afford to try to progress through. So I think not like the fact that the game's not free is going to be definitely something that's, how do I put this?
A good thing.
It's not something that's going to be immediately like, hey, they just want to hoard money out of us. Like the fact that it's not paid could be actually saving a lot of players.
Right. So like because he's part of the project, it's going to be a lot better for the whole entire, hey, we don't want this to be pay to win, that whole entire problem people are having with the game right now.
And that's something Valve's like been pretty good about, is not making their games pay to win. Now, the introduction of Dota Plus might be a poor timing for that comment, but
right.
overall,
Well, I saw a lot of people get mad about that on I saw something on the Artifact subreddit about people saying, uh-oh, here comes Artifact Plus. So yeah,
and
the timing is a little poor.
yeah, I don't think that will be an issue in this, especially since this is going to have like a buy-in for the initial game and a buy-in for the cards.
Well, and I think you're definitely right. I think, in my opinion, because he's part of this project, I think that worrying about like pay to win is going to be less of a problem. I do see the argument, though, that a lot of people are making that maybe it won't be pay to win, but it will be pay to play. Not just, hey, you got to pay to buy this game, but the idea that if you want to be on the meta level, you want to have the cards that are good enough to play in the meta, you will have to pay for them. And that's something you see in like Magic and all these other paper TCGs, right? Is you see a certain meta of cards and you have to pay to get to that point where you have the whole entire set. Do you guys think that will be like a problem for this game, or do you think they're going to be able to avoid that happening?
I feel like that'll happen in essentially every card game. Like that's something that happens in Hearthstone as well. Most people are spending at least $50 every expansion, unless you're like Trump and you do free to play the Legends every season or something like that. You're gonna have to spend a fair bit of money to get a deck or two. The good thing about this game, though, since it's actually a true trading card game, you can have the marketplace to sell off a deck once it becomes less interesting to play or whatnot. You can then afford to buy a new deck off market.
I also think the fact that the decks, the cards themselves are also going to be purchasable within the game, and that being the only way you can get them, rather than, or at least as far as we know, that would be the only way you can get them, rather than like the challenges and such that Hearthstone does. It means that like their value is going to withhold. So it's not like you're going to pour your life into a deck. It's going to get slightly nerfed or power creeped back, and then you're suddenly out like hundreds of dollars. I don't think that's going to be the way to do it, because there was another statement that was made where people are saying that rarity and competitiveness are not going to be linked in the way that they usually are, where if you're running a deck in Hearthstone, for example, with like legendary on legendary, you're going to be doing better than the guy who just bought the game and knows how to play at the same level as you, but doesn't have as much money to spend. There was a statement immediately from Gabe that said, effectively, a deck full of the right common cards will be as strong as a deck full of the right rare cards. To shift pace a little bit, did you notice the similarities in the like laning and attack phase, like different phases of a turn that were shown for the people who got to play the game? The similarities between that in Artifact and in Magic the Gathering, since it's the same creator.
I did notice that. That was kind of cool. It is kind of like just brought over from the way that he designed his game, because like if you look at the current like digital card games that are out there, sometimes they have different phases of turns, but like the leaders like Hearthstone, it's just this person has a turn, then the next person has a turn, and then this person has a turn. There's not necessarily different phases, and this is something that clearly Garfield's brought over from the projects he's developed in the past, and I personally really like it. What do you guys think about it? Is it something you like, or?
I like it a lot. It adds another layer of complexity because, like in Hearthstone, on the opponent's turn, there's nothing you can do besides like a secret or something. But in Magic the Gathering, there's a lot of you have a chance to play a card after almost everything your opponent does, like a reaction. You play cards based on that. And in Artifact, they said that there's an initiative sort of thing. So after your opponent gets to play cards, they pass initiative to you, and you have a chance to play things before it moves to the next lane, which I think is very good in terms of making the game more interactive between players and not just having it be like I play all my cards end turn, you play all my cards end turn.
Well, and I think it'll be a lot more engaging to play too, because like you said, there's this constant like back and forth interaction, which not to bash on it too hard, but in Hearthstone, like you said, there's nothing you really can do on your opponent's turn. Sure, you can kind of sit there and watch. You can click on the things on the side, but you might as well tab out. You know, like there's very little you can do in that moment. And I think that for me, when I was playing Hearthstone quite a bit, it made it a little bit boring to play because I just felt like I was sitting there a lot of the time. And yeah, you can kind of multitask because of the pacing of the game. You can be doing something else while you're playing Hearthstone, but it actually doesn't make for a very good like primary. I'm really in this like game. At least for me, I think for some people it might, but at least for me, that was actually a huge part of Hearthstone that I didn't really like.
I think at a higher level though, you're spending a lot of that time that isn't your turn planning out your next like 5 or 6 turns and adjusting to the enemy's moves as you make them, because Hearthstone is a game where you have like very common deck types. Like people are running things that you absolutely know the type of, and it's usually a few common ones. So you know the set of things in general that your opponent can do, and you're sort of adjusting based on which ones do they choose to do. How can I respond to this? But I think with Artifact, that's going to be less, since you have to also worry about responding in the middle of an opponent's turn with little downtime. It's going to be a little more of an intensive game, like mentally.
It'll give you less like breathing time. It'll be more go go go. You know, less okay, I can write stuff down. I can kind of think about what comes next. Like it'll give people less planning time, is what you're kind of saying.
Yeah.
It's kind of like even though Hearthstone has timers for turns, it's like chess, right? Where you have the clock and you want to make turns very, very quickly because it minimizes the amount of time that your opponent has to think. I think Artifact is going to have that kind of pacing where you want to constantly be bouncing the pressure of having to make a decision to the other player to minimize thinking time. And I'm sure Hearthstone has that too, but it definitely had its moments, at least in casual gameplay, where you're just kind of chilling, waiting for the guy to figure out what he wants to do. You're a little unengaged, and that's not something that I was particularly fond of. I don't know if you guys have heard this rumor, but at first I thought there's this number floating around, right? 40 cards. That's the limit for decks, or that's what
That's
I
the
thought at
minimum.
first. Right. And then I heard that's the minimum. There is no maximum. You can have a very huge deck. Of course, this is a rumor. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know if there's like official Valve statement saying this is how it's going to be, but the idea that hey, you can have a deck of unlimited size, and this actually kind of brings me to a point I want to point out about Richard Garfield and him coming to the project. In an interview, he kind of talked about how he was making this game on his own, and he had a contact at Valve that he discussed this game with, and that he was trying to create a digital card game because he hadn't done it before, and he saw how digital card games were taking off. And Magic the Gathering, anybody who plays Magic the Gathering knows this, it's had some success being on digital platforms, but it's also had a lot of struggles just because the gameplay was made for paper. It wasn't made for the digital setting. And this is something that Garfield wanted to remedy with Artifact, and that's why he was developing this before Valve. But what I think there's going to be a lot of things that he looks to shake up in this like stale digital card game kind of scene we have right now, because there was Hearthstone, and now there's a lot of Hearthstone clones. All these games do something a little bit different, but essentially most of them boil down to Hearthstone clones, right? I mean, you guys kind of agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So I think he's trying to do a lot of shake up things, and I think little things like, hey, there's no deck limit. The deck can be whatever size. I think that's a huge. I'm trying to shake things up. Do you think that there's going to be like more changes, huge changes to what we think of as the digital card game because Garfield's at the head of this project?
I think that there's going to be a lot of shakeups with in terms of a digital card game. Yes, because there's been one leader and there's been a lot of followers, and that's Hearthstone with all of its clones and minions, basically. But shakeups in terms of actual like card games, I don't think it's going to be as dramatic as what's been actually presented to us on a digital format. Because paper card games, obviously, as you said, have had more flexibility and have more ability to kind of play around with the limits. I don't think we're going to see anything startlingly new. We're obviously going to see a lot of new things and a lot of different things, especially since, we just have such limited experience to it. What I'm afraid of is that since there's so many similarities to Magic the Gathering and it is directly made by the same person, I don't think they're going to be like full claims, but there's going to be some hollow claims that this is a clone of Magic the Gathering, and it sort of is like on a separate branch as the Hearthstone and its clones. Do you think that the similarities are going to actually lead to a problem of this being referred to as a Dota clone or like a Dota labeled Magic the Gathering, or
I don't think it will be, just because of the fact, like, you look at like overall, just like the surface level of what the game is. It's very different in terms of that. For one, there's 3 boards, which is something that I don't know of a card game that has something quite that unique to it. That's just the idea of heroes, and the fact that when the card dies, it comes back in a turn or the next turn is something that's very unique to. I don't know of any other game that functions that way, digital or otherwise.
And I think mechanics like this is something that he probably had in the back of his mind developing games for a long time, paper games, but he hasn't been able to do until this digital chance, right? Because like, how are you ever going to do the 3-lane thing with paper cards? I mean, you could do it, but it would be annoying and it would take forever. And then things like a hero that constantly respawns, you'd have to worry about the player remembering this and not trying to sneak a hero back in. By having like, this is the great thing about digital card games is you basically have somebody to run the whole thing in the background, the computer. They're worrying about all the rules, and you can already see like the things we know, like these 3 lanes and all the heroes, that this is something that I'm sure is very excited about, because it just means he can do these kind of really wacky ideas that you could never ever see happen on paper. I don't know. Do you guys feel like we're going to see like a lot of just like really off the wall ideas that he probably wanted to do for years but he couldn't just because he was restricted to paper? Do you think that's kind of where he's going to go with a lot of the mechanics in this game?
I think the IGN stream quoted this really well when they said that this game is removing a lot of limits and it feels very freeing.
Something I saw on Reddit was the Artifact Reddit was that a guy mentioned that in Hearthstone, there's only so many ways you can buff or nerf a card. You can buff the mana cost, the health value, the attack value, and that's essentially it. You can sort of change the card actually does, but that changes more the identity of the card and makes it less. It isn't the best way to tweak things, but in Artifact, there's so many ways you can tweak things because each hero has an armor stat, a health stat, and a damage stat. Also, they have equipment inventory slots. So if a hero is overpowered, you could say, "Oh, Axe is no longer allowed to have a equipment slot. He can have attack and defense, but nothing more."
Well, then I think people will end up flaming Axe for not having any items.
True.
But they'll be like, come on, man. It's turn 6. Axe doesn't have any items. He was free farming. But all jokes aside, no, I completely agree. I think by adding so many more mechanics to heroes, you really open up for balancing that allows you to do small tweaks instead of big changes. Because I mean, the biggest moaning and groaning I've heard from the biggest digital card game community out there, Hearthstone, has been when they make a big change that knocks something out of the meta or makes something that was fun to play not fun. I remember after the whole entire Grim Patient change, I heard nothing from my friends who played Hearthstone but groaning over the change for a long time. I had one friend who was a fan of it, but the other 9 hated the way they did it because it like just changed everything. And I, like you said, I think it's a really good thing that won't have to be the only way they change things. Is there anything else you guys would kind of like to add or talk about as far as Richard Garfield being at the head of this project, things you hope to see, things you're worried about? Any last notes?
Something else is good, that the fact that we have Valve funding it essentially and Garfield being one of the lead designers of it. There's no telling, like it doesn't need to make money right off the bat because Valve's doing fine. They don't need it to be the best-selling game. They're making it because they want to make the game and enjoy it. So I think that's a good thing in general. Just that it's not like some indie dev is making it, and if it doesn't do well, it's gonna sink in a year. I feel like Artifact will be around for a while, whether it does good or bad, just because it's Valve.
Right. Well, none of Valve's projects that I would call modern Valve projects, right? Their newest round of games have even really stopped. The only one that's truly dwindling is like Team Fortress 2, but that's still pretty much going strong. I mean, they still release updates for it once in a while. There's still a consistent community for it. So yeah, I think you're right. When Valve makes a game, it sticks around. And I think that Artifact is going to be one of those games that, because Valve's behind it, it's going to end up sticking around a very long time.
Just a final note, I find it remarkable that the first thing that Valve produces after a game that competes directly with League of Legends, like Parallels, is a game that competes directly with Hearthstone. It's just funny that we're going straight into something that butts heads immediately with another company of the same genre rather than a new thing, a fully 100% new concept, which obviously is hard to produce in the modern day.
All right. And with all that said, we are going to wrap up our first topic here. Now would be a great time to take a little break if you need one before we start in on our second topic. Thanks for sticking with us. Hope we are entertaining you. All All right, and with that, we are back, and we are going to head just straight into our second topic, so get ready for that. Okay, so second topic here that we're gonna be jumping onto is kind of an idea that Gabe touched on, and he seemed kind of adamant about, which was a little interesting. He kept on saying in his presentation at Valve to the press, Artifact is not the Dota card game, which which is a little bit funny because when the game was revealed, its tagline, its little phrase underneath the logo, underneath the big title was literally the Dota 2 card game, right? The Dota card game. But no, he in this presentation made a big deal about Artifact is not the Dota card game. It was a card game that they were developing, and then they decided, hey, we should put the Dota lore on it, and this is how it's going to be. So I think kind of the interesting thing is, how is this going to affect the game Artifact, and how is this going to affect the IP it's based off of, Dota? I'd love to hear your guys' kind of thoughts on this. So
I think it's the removal of a limitation. Basically, I think the idea is they need a well-known IP to go by. They want something that people relate to, and with Valve, there's nothing bigger inside of Valve than Dota as of the past like 5-6 years. So it basically gives them a basis to start out of, and a lot of concepts that are card game concepts being applied to Dota heroes that it fits, but it removes the restriction of saying we have to translate every single Dota hero, item, and concept into a card game, because that would probably create a pretty bad card game unless it was done absolutely perfectly with no fillers. Like, you can't go out anything outside of Dota lore. You have to do everything that's in it and only everything that's in it, because all of these abilities and heroes, and often some of their lore comes out of the idea that this is a MOBA. The spells are designed for a MOBA, the pace is designed for a MOBA. So if you start trying to translate things that don't make any sense into a card game, you're just going to ruin the pace of your game. But it also, I feel like, opens up an opportunity to not only have the freedom to create things that aren't canon in Dota, but create things in Dota that wouldn't have like an idea to pop up immediately, like a concept that is a card game that say can translate, rather than like, being limited to, we have to extend on this idea and ending up with a bunch of heroes or new game modes that are carbon copies of the last one.
It's also pretty cool. It's a good opportunity to sort of tie the Dota lore all together, because as of right now, the Dota lore is very all over the place, because the game itself originated not based on a story. It was based off of Warcraft. So when it got ported over to be a standalone game, they sort of just made up stories to go along with it. I think Artifact will be an opportunity to sort of tie everything together by adding new cards that weren't from Dota originally, and it just is a chance to sort of like make everything seem to fit together in the universe.
as far as expanding the Dota lore, they've already shown a bunch of heroes that they plan on adding to Dota in the future. I think we have like one that's like a crow person that some people might think might get added to Dota. There's Kana, who it was in the Monkey King comic. She's like a creep. There's who people are affectionately dubbing Creep Jesus. He's in like the background of one of the posters for the game. He's like a really tall. He looks like a range creep from Dota.
It died for your barracks.
Right, he died for your barracks. He's just this really tall creep with like long hair. And then there's a few that we kind of know about because of voice lines in Dota, which is kind of how lore's been delivered recently in Dota 2. Like Sor Lakan. Shout out to Sir Action Slacks. I think he had an entire episode of his lore show dedicated to like Sor Lakan, or like half of an episode. Very, very cool idea with that character. But I think this is really interesting that we're gonna like see this whole entire Dota world fleshed out. And I think this means a lot for Dota players themselves. I mean, you're both really big Dota players. Is this something that really excites you, that we're about to finally figure out how the Dota world is? Is this something big for you?
I'm really hoping that it opens up a doorway for location-based stuff as well, because we have the Dota map. It's its own thing, and we don't have any secondary maps like some other MOBAs do. Smite, League of Legends, Heroes of the Storm all have like secondary maps that are played, while we have just the one. and a lot of locations are referenced, especially as of recent, from like the introduction of Mareska, Dark Willow. She mentions about 5 or 6 locations that we've never seen, and I'm hoping that some of these, like the spell cards, maybe heroes that are tied intimately with locations that we haven't seen, that basically can give us a landscape. Because before Source 2, we had a map, right? When you launched the game, you were given a map. The map had the tutorial in it, the map had the regular game. It sort of looked like somebody like inverted Australia, but it was still something. And after Source 2 came, they abandoned that idea. We were given Siltbreaker. That gave us some location, but it's been very limited. And I think this is not only since it's a card game needs a story behind it, unless everything will feel random. And that's another reason it's tied to the Dota IP in the first place. But I think like this gives us an opportunity to look at not only where all of our characters come from, but also where they could be going. Gives us sort of a timeline rather than stagnant forever battling for the ancients, so to speak.
Yeah, I think with a card game in general, there's more opportunity to have lore and a backstory to it because of things like flavor text on a card and whatnot. Also, something else is that is interesting, I feel like, is that having the fact that a MOBA and a card game are very different, so then you can add a lot more things to the Dota lore that you maybe have wanted to add for a while, but they just wouldn't fit mechanics wise into a MOBA. But in a card game, there's a lot more. It opens a new door to potential for things to add, and just to add it to the lore in general and to the story.
Something I want to point out, this also very heavily diversifies the Dota IP. Gabe kind of lightly touched on this in his presentation. He didn't get too much into it, so this is like tinfoil hatty of me. But he mentions the Pokemon brand, right? And he mentions that they have main series game. They also have a trading card game, and he also mentions they have like a TV show. And then with Dota, he's like, well, we now have a main game. We also now have a spin-off card game that people will like playing. And I think his goal as somebody who owns a company is creating a much stronger IP. And there's this funny moment too where he's listing the things that Artifact is not. And he touches on Artifact is not a TV show. It felt a little bit out of place because you were kind of like, well, I don't think anybody thought that Artifact was going to be a TV show. But I think he's kind of joking around about the idea of, yes, Dota is expanding as an IP. We're trying to increase its value. We're trying to get more people into it, not just people that would play MOBAs, but we're not trying to like take it in a abusable direction, like, hey, throw Dota on everything, throw Dota on a shirt, throw it on a TV show. But I think this could be really big for Dota fans. You're a Dota fan for life. You've played Dota 2 for a really long time. You might have even played Dota 1. Now Dota is going to expand to more things. Is this something that'll be kind of cool for you guys? Like, hey, there's going to be people that never played Dota 2 that I can talk to Dota about.
I think it's a first step of many.
That's very interesting to think about. Because like the more like the brand, the more the Dota brand branches out, the more people become attached to it. So like Pokemon fans, they'll play or consume any media related to Pokemon, and it's sort of similar to how Warcraft is with the Blizzard IP. Like Blizzard's really good at making people attached to an IP for life and be diehard fans of that, no matter what content they create. Like they made a movie, for goodness sake, about a video game that came out, and the fact that Valve is doing that with Dota, I think will make more people become even more diehard fans of Dota, like MOBA and Artifact, because it will make the fans even more dedicated, more than Dota fans already are, which I feel like most people know Dota fans are very dedicated in terms of they play just that.
The Overwatch free weekend dropping the percentages on a bunch of different games player bases, from like 8 to like 15%, depending on the game. Dota's didn't drop at all. Yeah, the fans in our game are extremely adamant on keeping doing exactly what they're doing right now, which is playing Dota and getting angry. So if you can play Dota and get angry in a trading card game, watching a TV show, it's all going to translate over, especially since you have this like gigantic platform of showing that off, I guess, to everywhere. Like we have Twitch already, plus the in-game client. It's all over Steam, and Steam is one of the largest game providers. So you're always seeing like, hey, it's spring cleaning update. Here we have new stuff, and they're like, it's on the front page of Steam. if when the international's happening, when any major's happening, it's on the front page of Twitch. It's just gonna reach an audience that it's never before going to, and it's going to draw in fans for a lot more fans and a lot more like revenue for them.
And something I want to do touch on here is what you were saying about Warcraft, where Warcraft, the way Blizzard works, right, in my mind, is they have kind of a few central IPs that are their killer IPs. These are the games that they continually release, and they make game after game just in these big series. Warcraft, it's StarCraft, it's Diablo. You know them. This is what they make games about. And when Overwatch came out, it was a big deal. Everyone was like, "What? Blizzard has a new IP? They don't do this, right?" And everyone was like, "Hey, this is a pretty big gamble for Blizzard. They usually don't take gambles like this." And I feel like this is something that Valve might be kind of realizing is very, very important for a company, because sure, they have Counter-Strike, but Counter-Strike kind of seems like it's set on just being Counter-Strike Go now. They, in the past, they released iterations on it, but they were essentially always the same game. Half-Life, yeah, it was, a couple games, and they really haven't touched on it since. It's hard to make spin-off games for Half-Life. It's a single-player shooter. TF2 is kind of the same thing. It's stuck in being a shooter. That's what it is. But Dota is their IP right now, which can be a killer IP. They can make any genre of game almost with Dota, and it kind of just works. Just like Warcraft. They had an RTS, then they had an MMO, and then they had a card game, and who knows what comes next for Warcraft. I think Valve is like really trying to copy this Blizzard model of, we need an IP that kind of does everything, and you're a fan of the IP and you play everything that comes out of that IP.
I think they're going to take this and they're going to bring it to every like different type of like entertainment platform that they can, because like if you're seeing it all the time and you are a fan of Dota, for example, you're going to try the next game and possibly going to be a fan of it. And if you're a fan of card games, you're going to see it's a card game. You're going to go in, you're going to get into the Dota lore immediately. But a consistent IP that is exactly like something that you know, something that you've already experienced, you're more likely to go and experience the new spin-off of it. And it's going to bring people into new fields. And I think it's just going to cross-merge this idea of, you have like CSGO players just play CSGO, Dota players literally just play Dota 2. They don't do anything else, like Overwatch players, et cetera, et cetera. This is sort of going to allow for a lot of crosstalk that's going to just benefit not only Valve, not only Artifact itself, but it's gonna benefit all of like esports, all of gaming. It's sort of, you have parallels in the same types of games that are starting to interact more. Like, we only have one card game, as we talked about earlier. Like, there's only one major digital card game, and that's Hearthstone. There's obviously a lot of paper ones, but this is the first experience to that. So you're going to draw in a lot of audience that would have never tried Hearthstone because it wasn't the Dota IP, or because it was Blizzard and that was a competitor or whatever. But at the same time, I don't think this is Valve abandoning any of their other series. I still think that these are going to go strong. I wouldn't say that like any of these games are going to be any less successful because Artifact is successful. And that seems to be a worry of a lot of like Valve fans that aren't necessarily Dota fans.
Sort of changing topic here. Something that Blizzard does very well is cross-game rewards. So like an example would be, you buy the Overwatch Deluxe Edition and you get a card back in Hearthstone, you get a mount in Heroes of the Storm, you get a mount in World of Warcraft, you get a border in Diablo. I wonder how much of that will be happen in Artifact and Dota now. I wouldn't expect there ever being a Dota skin CSGO really, but it'll be interesting to see if like, hey, if you buy the compendium this year, you get a special card pack in Artifact, or if you buy enough card packs, do you get a unique set for some hero in Dota? That'll be interesting to see, and I wonder, what do you guys think about that?
Well, what I think is really interesting is, I think they already kind of do this a little bit. You said that there's not going to be like a Counter-Strike Dota skin, and I don't think they've ever gone full out like that, but I think there's like little stickers in Counter-Strike that you can put on your weapons. I don't know. I don't get super into the customization in Counter-Strike, but I remember hearing a couple of years ago this came out. You could get stickers of like Queen of Pain and I think another hero on your weapons in Counter-Strike. So I think they already kind of do a little bit of this, but I would agree with you. This is something that Blizzard does super well. I mean, there's tons of people, and I know present company included, that just played Heroes of the Storm because you get an Overwatch skin, or you did,
I
for
really
playing
wanted that Genji skin.
I can't blame
I did
you.
get the Genji skin.
See, I didn't have the stomach to play Heroes of the Storm for that long, but that's just my personal beef with that game. I'm sure it's a good game though.
A point that I could make out of this is I was going to mention the Genji skin as well. There's a level of exclusivity that Valve does better than other companies. So this is also going to be a slightly controversial statement because of the introduction of Dota Plus. But for the most part, when a set comes out in Dota that's like, hey, this is a rare set, this set matters, it's not marketable for like 2 years, if at all. There are sets that are not. There's no date on when I'm going to be able to market my like fancy DK set, for example. And this is something that Blizzard didn't do. I played Heroes of the Storm for the 30 games that was necessary. I enjoyed those 30 games, and I got the Genji skin. And then I stopped playing Overwatch for a little while. I come back later, and now this skin is available in the game just like everything else. And it becomes like common and regular, like not necessarily as exclusive as it was. And I think this is something that I can almost guarantee that there's going to be like something you do in Artifact that gets you something in Dota and vice versa. I just hope that they stay, hey, I played some Artifact. I'm decent at Artifact. I played a little bit of it, so I have this in Dota. That it's not going to eventually be, hey, some guys played some Artifact, they got it in Dota, and then they sold it, and now I have it.
It helps keeps the special things special because like it gives a reason for them to be special. I was big into Overwatch for about a year and a half, and I was actually annoyed when like they brought back the Summer Games skins because I got the Genji skin, the red and black one, the Nihon one, and I was like, I just used it because it was something to show off that I played the very first summer of the game, which in of itself was kind of special, and it was a cool skin. In Artifact though, I don't worry about that happening as much because of unless they're doing like special card backs, they end up opening chests in Artifact so to get like skins for or card backs like Hearthstone does. I don't think that there's not much potential for that to happen in general since most of the things you're going to buy is most likely cards.
I wouldn't underestimate Valve's ability to create cosmetics out of thin air.
Well,
I think anything they can do cosmetics for, they will.
Have you guys seen the imps? The little guys who dance on the stacks of cards and move stuff around? Those guys are going to be so cosmetic like based. There's
Tiny
no
punches.
way. Well, okay. I think I made a joke to somebody I think on Reddit about this. They are basically the Ewoks of this game, right? They're the super marketable, cute little guy. Anybody will shell out money to make their imp look cool. I feel like the imps, yeah, maybe they kind of like help the game move along. I've seen like their animations do interesting stuff. Like I think they fly up to you with the chest when you're trying to buy items and stuff because the items come out of the chest, and that's pretty cool. It gives you like a little visual context to the game, but those things definitely were put in to be skinned and sold skins for. So I feel like this game, the idea of the classic Valve hat system of very exclusive hats is going to be alive and strong in Artifact. I had to agree with you here, Horse Cow. I think that's going to be the focus. Is going to be really exclusive cosmetics for them for sure.
You know, I'm shelling out the $35 when I can turn that imp into a shitty wizard.
See, I'll shell out $35 when I can turn it into Sir Action Slack in the Crystal Maiden costume. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that thick boy. Actually, something also that I wanted to touch on, I thought it was a little bit of a funny moment. So it wasn't always like Dota was going to be the Valve IP that they put on this card game. Gabe kind of talked about the idea of using other IPs. And there's this really dorky moment where one of the journalists just goes, "Oh, so you were considering a Counter-Strike Go card game?" he seems a little out of place, but and you could tell Gabe was a little flustered at him. He was kind of like, "What are you even talking about? Why would we make a card game about Counter-Strike Go?" But I think that's really interesting that Valve, had to consider all their IPs and landed on Dota to be their big kind of killer IP. I mean, do you guys see any other way that any of Valve's IPs could have worked for this at all?
I don't see Counter-Strike working at all. TF2, I feel like there's a very, very slim chance, or Half-Life. Half-Life's probably the better answer to that question. It's also interesting they didn't decide to make a new IP. I guess it's sort of just from a overarching perspective. It's just easier to use an existing IP that's semi-famous and notable than being, oh yeah, it's Artifact. It's this new IP Valve made for a card game. It's probably just a Hearthstone clone, but the fact that it's a Dota card, it's marketed as the Dota card game. There's some credibility to it. The fact that it's in the Dota IP. On the IGN stream, someone asked them if they mentioned Ice Frog at all at the press conference that Valve put on, and someone asked about if Ice Frog was involved in development at all in Artifact, and he's not involved in the development process. He has played it and he enjoys the game. They said that's something that's sort of interesting. That it's just cool to hear that like the man who like made Dota is like, oh yeah, you made a game based on my game, and I approve. It's good.
I think that's pretty cool too. Actually, somebody who really is into the competitive balancing side of Dota, I really enjoy that part of Dota. One of my first questions too was, is Ice Frog involved with Artifact? And I think there was kind of a meme post on the Artifact subreddit along the lines of, oh, now we know what the Artifact logo is, and it's like, like red is Gabe, and then like green is Richard Garfield, and the blue is Ice Frog. It's the trifecta that's making Artifact. That was the meme for that post. But I think it's really cool too that this is a game that Ice Frog approves of. Even if he's not involved, I would have thought it was even cooler if he was involved. But I'm glad it's a game that this guy that I've trusted balancing Dota for a long time enjoys too. I think that really speaks volumes to the quality of the game.
To come full circle to the to what started this topic with the fact that this is not exactly the Dota 2 card game. This does not mean that everything in Dota is going to come over to Artifact. Do you think that creates some pressure between the two for like if something is introduced into Artifact, chances are everyone who's playing Artifact at least initially is going to have been a Dota player for the most part, other than maybe Hearthstone pros that see some potential here, especially with $1 million tournament coming up. But that's besides the point. Do you think that something being introduced into Artifact is going to pressure the Dota team to find a way to introduce it into Dota and vice versa? How long before all 115 heroes are in Artifact, et cetera, et cetera? Like, do you think that type of like crosstalk and pressure is going to be a problem, or do you think it's going to only be a benefit for the game?
Like right off the bat, in Artifact's release, they sort of have to borrow a lot from Dota because they just haven't had enough time to develop their own heroes and cards and whatnot, or at least borrow loosely items based off the other items, but not directly stolen from. To say, I feel like there will be a bit of that, but I think that's mostly on like the fans saying like, oh, Dota's the game that came first, so they're the ones leading it. The Artifact one just has to take. They're just like they have to just take the heroes from Dota and they can't create their own. But I feel like there won't be that because they've sort of already said that there'll be heroes in Artifact that won't necessarily come over to Dota, which I think is interesting to say. I don't know if that's good or bad though.
Something I want to point out, I do think that there's going to be this rift between the games of content that isn't translated between the two, and I hope it doesn't create too much pressure between the games. I don't think a lot of pressure gets to the Dota development team. There's been a lot of times where there's been a lot of pressure for them to release content, work on this, work on that, and they kind of just go at their own pace. So I think hopefully they're safe from that, but I do think there will be a very big rift sometimes. If you look at the items that we know about so far from Artifact, you see a few that you're like, hey, this could have been skinned over with a Dota name and a Dota item. I think there's an item called Shield of Basilius that provides like armor to people in your lane, right? Next to your hero. Well, why not just use the actual Ring of Basilius from Dota? They kind of took like their own creative differences and decided to do their own thing. Or I think, I don't know the name of this item. I was kind of just like grazing over items in Artifact. There's an item that does cleave. Your hero attacks, it does cleave damage to other units in the lane. Why not just use Battle Fury for this concept? But they came up with their own name. It's like Blade of something. So I think that these teams are kind of almost dead set on not being pressured by each other and not being 100%, we have to do everything the same.
I feel like that's another thing that goes back into the lore is the fact that say it becomes Shield of Basilius rather than Ring of Basilius just adds a layer of depth that like every single item in Dota is not just some arbitrary concept. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we immediately start seeing cards that are like Aghanim's references, right, to the actual person, not necessarily the scepter. And it's sort of going to give depth to the people who created the items and or maybe the origin of the items, for example. Like if we have more than one item that cleaves, Battle Fury doesn't become as specific, and I guess in a general sense, it makes more sense that there would be more than one of them in a game rather than something being like a super unique item.
I agree. Like I really like this idea of kind of like fleshing out ideas by not just being a one-to-one to this is a Dota match that's played in a card game. I really appreciate that. All right, and with that, we are gonna wrap up the second topic. Now's our final break before we head into our third topic. But trust me, you're going to want to stick around for the third topic because it's probably the most controversial. And with that, we'll see you in just a couple seconds. Okay, we are back with our final topic, and without a further wait, we're just going to jump right into it. All right, moving on to our third section, and definitely going to be the most opinionated and salty section for everybody, the payment model of Artifact. Probably the biggest deal, biggest issue going on right now with Artifact. Of course, it turns out that Artifact, a lot of people assumed, was going to be free to play. That is just not the case. It's going to cost money to get into Artifact, and unlike other digital trading card games, digital card games, there will be no way to receive cards for free so far, as we understand it. Of course, Valve could change this in the future. They could add some systems into place, but from what we understand right now, this is how the game's payment model is going to work. A lot of people have different opinions on it, and we'd love to share ours with you guys. So I don't know. What do you guys think about this whole entire situation? How do you feel about it?
Is it 100% confirmed that you won't be able to buy packs or get packs for free, like for starting the game? I presume they have to give you some cards to start the game, but like beyond that.
So if I'm wrong about this, correct me. But from what I understand is that yes. So when you get the game, you will have, as Valsef has put it, the ability to play the game. So I assume it's going to be like a starter pack of cards. I think that's a pretty safe assumption. But from there, if you want additional packs, you will have to pay real life currency. Some people are speculating that tournaments maybe will be ran and that packs could be a prize for this, kind of like battle cups in Dota. If people are familiar with that concept, it's kind of the idea that there's automated tournaments where you play against other players and your classic tournament bracket, and then the winner gets a prize. Some people are speculating that that could be a way to get free cards, but at the same time, those tournaments cost money to enter in Dota. So is it really going to be free? Right now, not 100% confirmed, but it's been strongly suggested that there will be no way to get cards for free.
Okay, so in that case, first things first, we're probably looking at like a $20 to $30 paywall. We're not looking at like a AAA $60 games. Those don't seem to be Valve style, I think. They don't do that very often, do they? Correct me if CSGO, not so much. $20, right?
I feel like the Orange Box, which was a collection, I think released around a price tag like that, and Portal 2 did. But these were, of course, releases that also came out on consoles where they were worrying about physical distribution costs. So it was a little bit of a different situation. So this usually isn't Valve's style. I would say it's probably going to be like more akin to how CS:GO was done. CS:GO, of course, had like a price tag, but it was not AAA level price tag to get in. So I don't think $60 price tag's a thing.
Hey, you're sure as hell not going to do that for a game that's going to be played on mobile.
No, that would make people really upset.
Right off the bat, I just want to say that I am happy that they're doing pay-to-play model opposed to like the Hearthstone thing, because for one, it gives actual value to the cards that you get when you open a pack. It's not just like, oh yeah, I got a legendary, but like it's not for the deck I want, so it's kind of just sort of just useless. I could dust it for a fourth of the value and then get a rare, but that's not quite the same at all. Like, doesn't give you that satisfaction of unboxing like a $30 card and then selling it on the marketplace and then buying like 3 uncommons. It's I think there's a lot more gratification from opening a pack than it's more value leading to like the time you put into the game. Which I think is a good thing overall.
To rephrase that, effectively, if they're going to make me pay for cards entirely, I'm definitely okay with that, depending on like I guess specifications. Because, for example, in Hearthstone, this is what we have to go back for everyone, as well as like traditional card games, right? You pay for the set pack that you're looking at. Okay, you pay for the original set, the newest set. You can choose between the two you're buying at most times. This is the same way with regular card games. They may only be sold in a store for so long, but you walk in, there might be 2 or 3 different options. I'm hoping that there's that type of specifics in in Artifact, if not more. Like, walk in and say you have like maybe 2 or 3 different types. Maybe what they entail isn't exactly 100% transparent, or maybe it is. But like different types of packs that give you different types of things, whether it be like subsets or full sets later on. But I don't like the idea of using the same like loot box hat type of thing that Valve does a lot of the time, where you're sort of rolling the dice to an extreme case. Obviously, you're rolling the dice; it's cards. You're gonna get random cards. But I think that if you're looking to build a deck and cards are you're only able to get cards through payment, then you should have a little bit more control of what you are asking for when you pay. Not necessarily like a given, but like subsets is what I'm thinking.
You already have unlimited education because you have the marketplace. Like, if you want to buy a specific card for you to round out your deck, you can just go to the marketplace and buy it like a single card of it. So I think that sort of solves that problem up front.
That's true. That's true.
Well, and this is something interesting. You kind of said that it will be really big to unbox cards. Like, it'll be a lot more focused. Like, it'll be an important part of the game. And this is something that I think Valve is actually really searching for with this game, right? So, like Hearthstone, you don't really see a lot of people do Hearthstone unboxing videos, Like, it's cool when you get a legendary. Yeah, that's cool. But most of the time, you're just going to dust like half the cards. You're going to just craft whatever you need. But then you look at a game like Counter-Strike. Somebody unboxes a knife. It's a big deal. People will literally stream themselves opening just hundreds of crates to get a knife. It's a big deal. It's a huge attraction to Counter-Strike. I feel like Valve is searching for that feeling again. They want people to be hyped, to spend money, to get packs and to open packs, and they want people to be excited about watching other people open packs. They want to be excited about, hey, I finally got this rare card. And while maybe it's almost like a sense of accomplishment, that they're going for here. I mean, would you guys agree with me here? This is kind of like what Valve's trying to do, is replicate the CS:GO factor.
Definitely. I think that what you're saying about Hearthstone's cards being not exactly that exciting to open with packs is because you're constantly getting them, and they usually don't cost you anything because you did like the daily challenges, unless you're going for big stuff. And then when you go into their DLC sets, you're getting very specific legendaries that come out of playing like a solo campaign. And I think Artifact's going to, or at least it seems like so far, under this payment model, they do less of that. They do less of that type of, I bought like a single player campaign to go through to get me the legendaries for the set I want to run. Even if they aren't the most important legendaries, they still would be like rare cards that are guaranteed and that kind of thing. That is like the most amount of excitement you get out of like opening cards in that type of game. And I think Isaac came up with a good point when it comes to the market, is that my cards aren't free. That would be, if my cards are free, I would be making money off the market almost all times, right? But if I have to pay like $5 pack and I get, like 4 packs, $20, and then one of the cards in there is worth 18, it's like a super rare one, but it's not something you necessarily need or foresee yourself immediately needing, or there's some other holes in your deck that you need more for, you're going to get like a large amount of return. You're not always going to get exact returns. And if there's a specific card you need, you don't want to open packs for it, just go buy that card. So it seems like after a certain while, you're going to stop like continuously buying packs and start pouring your money straight into the market, which I could see as a good thing or a bad thing for the payment plan for Artifact. Is that if the market gets saturated with cards just on based on how many people buy packs, and suddenly like the cards I need are like a cent a piece, I'm not going to go buy a $5 pack just for a chance to get something slightly better.
I think that's where exact pricing is something that we don't know yet, right? Like we were saying earlier, we don't know the exact price for the buy into the game, but we also don't know how much packs cost, like just loose packs of cards would cost. Because, if it's something insane like $5 for potentially only like 5-10 cards, there's a lot of situations where it's never going to be worth opening packs, right? And this is something that we saw happen in TF2 and in Dota and Counter-Strike. Is it became kind of pointless for you to open crates if you were just going for the smaller stuff. And I think that's hopefully something that they try to remedy with this game, is make it worthwhile to open packs. If you're looking for that 1 or 2, 3 loose cards to finish your deck, sure, go to the marketplace, but it should still be exciting and also valuable, worth your money, I think. And this should be one of their aims, to continue to open packs. It shouldn't be like, there's no reason I should ever do this.
I feel like for more casual artifactors, once the game actually comes out, opening packs will be so much more entertaining as opposed to actually just buying them on the market. Because when you open a pack, there's always like the little possibility that you get a $100 card or something like that. Whereas on the marketplace, yeah, you can buy whatever you want, but it's just less fun, I guess you could say. Like Magic the Gathering has this exact same thing. Opening a pack is satisfying. It's almost addicting, and I feel like it won't be hard to get people to want to open packs just because of how the chain. Like, oh man, I might get a Black Lotus or Artifact equivalent.
I think the pricing also comes down to the fact of how many cards are in the game, right? So I just looked up the original amount of cards put into the opening Hearthstone and how many you were given to start the game. Now, Hearthstone started with 133 basic cards that were free and given to everyone, and then 239 that you could get in the original Classic set. That brings you up to 372, but only 239 of these were cards that you bought. And how much, does anyone remember how much Hearthstone packs cost? They're like 99 cents or something?
Yeah, they're about $1, I believe.
Artifact is starting at 324, so it's slightly less, and we don't know how many of these are going to be given, especially if like a smaller portion of them are being given, because Hearthstone's was 133. That's effectively about a third, a little over a third of the cards that were in the original set were being given to you to start. So 99 cents for the chance to get about 200 cards, rather than maybe say we start with maybe 80, 100 cards. Could be slightly less. It would be about the same proportion in that case, but I can't see that our pack prices would be anything ridiculous along with like that buy-in price.
Something to sort of go off of. They said that there was a comment that made that like if you buy Artifact, you'll have enough cards to play the game, which sort of sounds like an obvious statement. It's sort of interesting if you think about it, because they also have said that they were going to do a rotation style of phasing out cards. Hearthstone started doing the same thing. They had the classic set, like that set will always be standard or whatever, and the older expansions have been phased out. That sort of means Artifact will have to do the same thing, because if the classic set isn't in standard anymore, if you bought the game at launch and then 2 years later you want to play again, you couldn't have the cards to play. So it means that they're sort of into that, which I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just something I thought about and I thought was kind of sort of interesting.
I think that will put a lot of value behind like your first cards, right, that you get with the game. Right away will start you with some value, because like those cards will never go out of play. They'll always be there. I think that's an interesting point, actually, is that like the first whatever basic set cards we have are gonna be there forever, unless they do something weird like just like giving you a basic set of cards, doing something like you buy the game and the game comes with like 10 packs or something. That would be a little bit of a weird thing to do, but yeah, no, I agree with you that's kind of something interesting to think about, is that the base set will probably be with this game for a long time. Something I want to start touching on, because this is really big in the community. This is something people are upset over. Does this kind of style make the game pay to win? Does this mean that if you don't have the best cards, you can't win? Is this something that you guys have concerns over? Because obviously a lot of people are very concerned about this.
I'd like to re-reference the statement I made earlier, which was that Gabe said that the competitiveness and rarity will not be interlocked, so that the most expensive cards will not be the best. Someone who has all commons, the right commons, will be able to play just as well as someone who has all the most rare cards. So this being said, pay to win comes down to, do I have to pay a cent a card for the cards that are good for this game, and I don't happen to have those because I haven't bought enough packs or I wasn't given all of them in the base set? That could happen. That's most likely going to happen, is the fact that like if the most common cards cost like 5, 10, 15 cents, and you need them for your deck, you might have to pay a little bit of money to get everything that you need, unless you want to either try to play without them or get packs that are random. But I don't think it's going to come down to pay to win in the sense of I'm going to pay $10 for this one good card that's going to completely make or break my deck.
Okay, if you don't view it as, pay to win, do you get concerned about it being pay to play, right? Like play on the most competitive level? Because to make like an analogy, Hearthstone, right? There are certain cards that you just have to have. You have to have certain cards to play on a competitive level. That's just how the game is, and Blizzard doesn't seem to care that much that this is how it is, or else they would have changed it by this point. Is this something that people should be kind of worried about happening with Artifact? Because on top of that just being inherently common in card games, Artifact, there's no way to get it for free, right? So like Hearthstone, even though you have to have this card to play competitively, you could eventually get it for free. But Artifact, that's just not going to be the case. If we get a situation where you have to have X card to play in a certain bracket competitively, there's no way that you're ever going to get it for free. You will have to shell out money. Is that something that you guys are concerned about at all?
I feel like if a card is inherently required to play the game, first of all, that's a weakness in the design of the game. Maybe in the certain meta, yes, but like along with standing a card that is required to play the game, if it exists and it's not in the base set, I think that's a design problem, yes. I think it would be in that case be pay to play. But I'm hoping anything that by the time we get out of beta, at least, let's not restrict it to as soon as the game is available to play, but like say once the official release comes out, anything that is 100% or even like 90, 80% necessary to play in the game is either given in the base set or has been nerfed down to the point that it is not necessary.
I don't really feel like it's a problem either way. I feel like most Magic the Gathering players would just say that, like, yeah, the game, it's quote unquote pay to win, meaning that like you want to get a top tier deck, you might pay $500 or something like that. That's sort of just a random number I'm throwing out, but for the sake of an example. But instead of thinking it's $500 to win the game, like, oh yeah, you guarantee to win, like you paid $500. It's more like the game costs $500 at the base level to play the game, and it's not like Hearthstone when you sink $200 when an expansion comes out. That $200, it gives you enjoyment and like it gives you time playing the games and it allows you to play with the new things. But in Artifact, spending $500 on cards, you can get that $500 out. You can spend that on other games if you're bored of Artifact. It's not like that money's gone as it is in Hearthstone, so let's say.
That also kind of makes the small presumption though that what you put in has a damn good chance of coming back out. But I think there's going to be a significant cash sink in buying large amounts of cards. Not in the
Well,
sense that you have to buy them to play, but more so that you have to, if you buy them, you're not going to get everything out exact price or more than what you paid. You're going to lose some of the money having the cards because their market worth will probably not be the same as the pack worth, average wise.
well, yeah, and the issue with that is, so like it's a concept in gambling, like slot machines and whatnot, that there is like a set average return rate. So like if you played infinity games of like a slot machine, it would turn like 60% of the money you put in, right? And there can be outliers where somebody's a huge winner. You can have outliers where somebody's a huge loser. I mean, let's look at card opening at face value, what it actually is. It's kind of like gambling. Let's say you open like 1,000 packs. We find that the average return value is like 60% on cards. So like that number you threw out, $500, comes back to you as $300 in cards. And this is, just kind of how these gambling type of things tend to work. The other issue, and a lot of people have been mentioning this as a weakness of having the market be the predominant way of exchanging cards. A lot of rumors saying that people will not be able to trade at all. Valve has kind of said that this is not the priority for them.
This is not confirmed, though.
Right, not confirmed. The big issue is Valve tax. Anybody who has traded on the market knows that the money that you buy an item for doesn't 100% go to the person. So like the lowest you can really legitimately buy an item for on the Steam market is about 3 cents. The person only gets a cent back. That is Valve tax. And it scales differently based on different prices, but no matter what exchange happens on the Valve marketplace, the Steam marketplace, Valve takes home some money. The house keeps some money. And this is something that people are concerned about because in a normal physical trading card game, there's nothing like that. You just trade a card with another player. Here, Valve is going to take some money no matter what. If you're opening packs, if you're buying from the market, Valve is getting your money. I mean, is this something you guys feel like could be an issue?
I feel like stating they're obvious. Valve's gonna make a ton of money off this because there's a buy-in price, all the packs you have to buy, and they also get a percentage of everything sold. Valve they're a genius for thinking of something like they already have the marketplace, but it's sort of a genius idea just to use it for selling cards.
Another thing too is, okay, so this is opinion, but I think a lot of people, if this was the first digital card game that was coming into the marketplace, right? Maybe they'd be fine with this. It's based off of physical card games, right? It's very similar to models that we see with Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Even. It's very common to those systems. But because other games exist in this digital market and they're all free to play, I actually don't really know of any that aren't free to play. I think this is why people are upset. Do you think it's more of a problem of expectation, or do you think people are actually getting ripped off here? Because my opinion, I think it's like almost maybe 70% just people's expectations were changed here or disrupted. Do you think expectation is the issue here, not actually the model?
I definitely would say so. Like Hearthstone has been on the top and was probably the first actually polished game, card game online. I feel like if Hearthstone were to say like, oh yeah, it's a $20 to play, you get 100 cards, and the packs cost $1, and you also can sell your cards and get the money back. People would have been like, oh yeah, this is reasonable. This is how Magic the Gathering works. This is how Yu-Gi-Oh works. This is how Pokemon works. And then all the clones, the copies or spin-offs of Hearthstone that came out would have done the similar thing. And then people would be used to it because it's just, oh yeah, this is how it always has been. But since Hearthstone went a different route and got famous doing that other thing, people are sort of thrown off by the fact that Artifact is going to do something more traditional, I guess, in terms of how paper card games worked.
So effectively, we're breaking the mold digital-wise, but sticking to the mold really well traditionally, and traditionally has 30 years of experience behind it. And we just happen to have a better platform for putting it out.
Yeah, it's the Australia factor, the boomerang. We're going back in time.
Oh, the Australia factor.
The Australia factor. But no, I think it is definitely just people's expectations are being blown out of the water here. Like I thought it was going to be free to play and it's not. This makes me really upset. And I think it makes some people kind of uncomfortable too. I think a huge part that really shows to me that this uproar over the pricing model of Artifact was mostly based on expectation is a thread I saw on the Artifact subreddit. Somebody just asked the question, how much do you plan to spend per month in Artifact? Just on average. I feel like the average gamer maybe buys like a AAA title every 2-3 months. So that's like $20-$30 a month on average, right? Quick maths. But very quick maths. But you go to this thread, and the number one reply with the most upvotes is $0 to $5. And I think this is an amount that is based off of people who have been playing Hearthstone, people who have been playing Dota, where you don't have to spend money. I don't think this is based off of what people averagely spend on their video games. I think this is what people expected to spend on Artifact, and they're not realizing that, hey, if I do play this game quite a bit, it makes sense that I pay for it. And just like I do for any other AAA game. Is that something that kind of surprises you guys too? That like so many people were like, I don't plan on paying for this game at all.
If this came directly out of, for example, if this wasn't put with the Dota IP on it, if this was just a card game that was said, hey, the guy who made Magic the Gathering is making this. All the Magic the Gathering, all the professional card players, they come in and be like, hell yeah. And they'd understand how reasonable it is to pay these prices because they've been paying a lot more. Like booster packs cost like $100 in Magic the Gathering. But the majority of people coming over here are Valve fans and Dota fans. All right, it was announced at the International. 2 of the 3 of us were there. It wasn't met that well, but people were like, okay, this is pretty cool. It's Dota doing some other thing. But Dota players are people with hundreds to thousands of hours in a game they have never had to pay a cent for, right? I have over 6,000 hours in this game, and I don't think not buying the cosmetics I bought or the compendiums, maybe not the compendiums, but the cosmetics alone would have not made me play the game any more or less. I've just thrown it in there to have them during it. Like compendium type things are a little bit different because you have a specific reason to play for quests and challenges and stuff. But in general, the money you're putting into this game is not something that directly affects your enjoyment, and especially does not affect your performance in the game. If this was people coming from most genres, they would be fine with a buy-in price plus a small card price, as long as they felt confident, and we don't have a lot of information to be confident in this. This is another problem here, that we would have enough to play the game to start. Because it might have been stated, right, that you have enough to play the game as soon as you buy it. But there's this thing in the back of your head that says, Jesus, I'm gonna need like some super rare card just to even have any fun in this game.
I feel like another reason people may be butthurt about it being not free through and through, or having free ways to get packs, is because in Magic the Gathering or a traditional card game, you pay X dollars for a pack, and you have something like, oh yeah, I have this Blue Eyes White Dragon card I can show off. You have something to hold on to, even if it is just on paper. It's something more than just pixels on your screen. People might be like, oh well, since it's all digital, it's not worth spending money on packs as much as it is a physical game. Something else to point out is, you mentioned the compendium, and it reminded me of this. I believe it's been confirmed that they're going to do compendium style things in Artifact, which is, there's a ton of potential for, since it's based on buying packs. So a certain percentage of that can just go to the Artifact International.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page as far as like, we don't feel like this is too bad of a system. But I do feel like we're still definitely in the minority. There's a lot of players who are very, very upset. I mean, I saw some guy on the subreddit. He was really mad. He was saying that Richard Garfield was overrated. Come on, dude. You can't say that. But yeah, I feel like we're in the minority right now with this one. So it's everyone's gonna have their own opinion on it. But I think the most important thing is that we give the game a chance, right? We don't know a lot right now, and if you know anything about Valve, you know that they're probably not going to communicate with us, at least not very, very frequently, until they're ready to do it and they have something solid. So right now, I think we're kind of stuck in this spot where we don't know if this system's going to work out, if it's going to be fair. But I think the most important thing for everybody is to just stick with it, remain hopeful, see what comes out of this. I mean, would you guys agree that, hey, an open mind is probably the best thing everyone could do right now?
I think it comes down to a bottom line. Players don't want to pay anything, and the company's got to make a profit. And I think even the players who are complaining continuously before a game has even come out, they're still probably going to buy the game and play it as much as everyone else who is currently okay with the system. And there might be, cries of wolf of I don't want to pay this amount of money, but I'm pretty sure if the market doesn't want to pay this much, they won't. And if they do, they will. So whatever system comes out will be adjusted and regulated based on, hey, not as many people are buying this as we thought. Let's change something. Or, wow, this is working and nobody's actually as angry as they were before this happened. So my advice would be to try not to fall into the rabbit hole of I don't want to do XYZ 6 months before a game, like 10 months before a game comes out in full release.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. People just wait it out. Like, we didn't know anything about this game a week ago, and now we know. People seem to think they know everything about it already before the game comes out, or the game's even close to out. So definitely wait. We don't even know like if things could change. Also, like they said that packs will not be free at all. People might complain enough that changes. I honestly hope not, but it's definitely a possibility. So wait games released to then decide if you're gonna complain more.
All right, well, I think we've kind of reached a good point here. We kind of discussed every facet of this, what basically is a minefield, of salt. The salty field is probably the best way to put it. So with that, we're gonna wrap up this topic. So yeah, everyone, just kind of stay hopeful. We'll wait this whole entire pricing thing out, and I'm sure this isn't gonna be the last time we talk about it. I'm sure as we learn more, we'll talk about it more, and we of course would love to hear more about what people think about this, as long as it's civil, of course. But yeah, with that, we're gonna wrap it up. All right, and with that, we're pretty much done. That covers our last topic, the last one we wanted to discuss. And this podcast is definitely getting a little bit on the long side. The goal was about an hour, and we're definitely past that point. So with that, we're going to wrap it up here. I want to thank you so much for watching through or listening through the entire podcast. This was our first podcast, which means that we have a lot to learn. We have a lot that we need to get better on, we need to try out. So we would love to hear people's feedback on what we need to do better in the future. Also, I'd like to take a quick moment to just discuss what the future of this program is going to look like. We're thinking right now that we will do about an hour-long show bi-weekly during the development of this game while we're still learning about it, and throughout the launch of Artifact 2. If it's something that people like, we'll keep on making it. If not, we'll revise and try to make the show a little bit better and try to fit a format that more people will enjoy. But our plans are to continue this program right now. And of course, I'd like to thank you everybody for sticking through till the very end of the podcast. That is quite an accomplishment. I know it's probably rough around the edges in a few places, but like I said, we are going to be working on it. And we hope to see you back here in about 2 weeks. Have a great day and a great 2 weeks. See you soon.